Your salary doesn't align with our new compensation structure, Sloane Reeves said flatly, her manicured hands folded neatly on the polished conference table. 2 security guards hovered by the door, their presence making the implication clear. This is effective immediately. I looked at her, taking in the expensive silk blouse and the carefully rehearsed expression of corporate regret. Behind those practiced eyes, I could see what she really thought, that I was just another line item to be trimmed in the post-merger efficiency sweep. I understand, I replied, smiling calmly. I wish you all the best. My name is Marissa Langley. For the past decade, I've led the Enterprise Accounts Division at Crosswell and Pine in Richmond, Virginia. Or rather, I had. I built that department from scratch, cultivating relationships with our top clients until my team was responsible for 40% of the company's annual revenue. 10 years of early mornings and late nights, canceled vacations and postponed family gatherings, all dedicated to making sure our clients felt valued, and in less than 15 minutes, it was over. I gathered my personal items from my office while my team watched in stunned silence. Many had tears in their eyes. I hugged each of them, whispering encouragements and thanking them for their hard work. Then I walked out of the building without protest, my head held high. As the glass doors closed behind me, I took a deep breath of the crisp autumn air. The security guard who had escorted me out, Thomas, who'd worked there for 12 years, and whose daughter I'd helped get an internship last summer, looked apologetic. I'm sorry, Mrs. Langley. This doesn't feel right. It's okay, Thomas. Change is part of business. But as I drove home, the weight of what had happened finally hit me. I had given everything to Crosswell and Pine. I had delayed starting a family, missed my father's 70th birthday celebration, and worked through pneumonia to close our biggest account. All because I believed in what we were building. When the merger with Ardentix Group was announced 3 months ago, I'd had reservations. Their corporate culture was notoriously cutthroat, and rumors of their strip-and-sell tactics had circulated in the industry for years. But the board had assured us that our company's values would remain intact. Now I understood the truth. This wasn't just a compensation issue. Sloane wanted my clients, but not the person who had earned their trust. She thought those relationships would transfer seamlessly to whoever took my place. I pulled into my driveway, turned off the engine, and smiled to myself. Sloane Reeves was about to learn a valuable lesson about the difference between clients and relationships. The first call came while I was still unpacking my box of office belongings. It was Harold Fletcher, CEO of Fletcher Logistics, one of our largest clients. Marissa, what the hell is going on? I just heard you're out. It's true, Harold. The new management decided to go in a different direction. Different direction? You've been our point person for 7 years. You guided us through that nightmare with the Asia-Pacific expansion. My board trusts you. I could hear the genuine concern in his voice, and it touched me. Harold and I had developed a rapport that went beyond the typical client-vendor relationship. When his wife was diagnosed with breast cancer last year, I'd connected them with the specialist who ultimately saved her life. I appreciate that, Harold, really. But companies change, and so do priorities. Well, our priority is working with people we trust. I'm calling Sloane Reeves myself. Similar conversations followed throughout the day. Each client expressed shock, confusion, and in some cases, outright anger. I was careful not to criticize Crosswell or Ardentix. There was no need. The situation spoke for itself. That evening, my husband James prepared dinner while I sat at our kitchen island, scrolling through dozens of messages from colleagues and clients. You're taking this remarkably well, he observed, sliding a glass of wine toward me. What good would falling apart do? I replied, though the truth was more complicated. I had suspected this might happen from the moment the merger was announced. Ardentix had a pattern: acquire companies with strong client relationships, cut the expensive relationship managers, and hope the clients stayed through inertia. It worked often enough to make it their standard procedure, but they had miscalculated this time. What Sloan didn't understand was that my clients weren't just attached to Crosswell and Pine, they were attached to me. I wasn't just a department head. I was the person who answered their calls at midnight when problems arose, who remembered their children's names, who anticipated their needs before they even realized them themselves. "So, what's your plan?" James asked, knowing me too well to believe I didn't have one. I took a sip of wine and thought about the non-compete clause in my contract. It was stringent, but not impossible to navigate. And more importantly, I knew exactly which clients would follow me once it expired. For now, I'm going to take a much-needed break. Maybe we'll finally take that trip to Portugal we've been talking about. I smiled, but my mind was already racing with possibilities. The news of my termination spread quickly through Richmond's business community. By the following morning, my phone was inundated with messages. Former colleagues, industry contacts, and even competitors expressing their disbelief. I spent the day organizing my home office and responding to messages. Around noon, my former assistant Eliza called. "It's chaos here," she whispered. "Sloan's been in emergency meetings all morning. Fletcher Logistics, Westland Manufacturing, and Davidson Partners all called demanding to know why you were let go." "That sounds stressful," I said neutrally. "Marissa, she's telling everyone that you were asking for an unreasonable compensation package after the merger, that you were being difficult." I laughed softly. "That's interesting, considering I was never even given the opportunity to negotiate. Everyone knows it's not true. Your team is furious. We're all updating our resumes." After we hung up, I sat back in my chair, contemplating. Sloan was already crafting a narrative to justify my termination. It was predictable, but short-sighted. The clients knew me too well to believe I'd put personal gain over their needs. Later that afternoon, I received an unexpected visitor. Gerald Davidson himself, the 80-year-old founder of Davidson Partners, was standing on my front porch. "I hope I'm not intruding," he said when I opened the door, leaning slightly on his cane. "But some conversations shouldn't happen over the phone." I invited him in and made tea. Gerald had been my first major client when I joined Crosswell and Pine. He had taken a chance on me when I was still proving myself, and that trust had evolved into a friendship that transcended business. "I spoke with Sloan Reeves this morning," he said, his weathered hands wrapped around the teacup. "She fed me some nonsense about restructuring and compensation packages." "That seems to be the official line," I replied. "Marissa, I've been in business for over 50 years. I know when someone's trying to sell me a load of garbage." He set down his cup firmly. "Davidson Partners has been with Crosswell and Pine because of you. When my grandson had that problem with substance abuse, you found him the treatment program that turned his life around. When we needed to pivot during the pandemic, you were there with solutions while everyone else was panicking." He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. "This is a letter formally notifying Crosswell that we're reviewing our contract. I wanted you to know before they did. Gerald, I appreciate your loyalty, but I don't want you to make business decisions based on personal feelings." He smiled, the wrinkles around his eyes deepening. "This is a business decision. Without you there, the quality of service will decline. It's that simple." After Gerald left, I sat with the knowledge that the first domino had fallen. Not because I had pushed it, but because relationships built on genuine care and trust have their own momentum. The realization was both sobering and empowering. I hadn't been just doing a job all these years. I had been building something invaluable. 3 days after my termination, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. "Marissa Langley speaking." "Marissa, this is Diane Reynolds from Ardentix Legal." Her voice was clipped, professional. "We've noticed some unusual activity with our key accounts and wanted to touch base." I moved to my home office window, gazing out at the maple tree in our front yard, its leaves turning brilliant shades of orange and red. "I'm not sure how I can help with that, Diane. I no longer work for the company." "Yes, but we believe you may be contacting our clients and potentially violating the terms of your non-compete agreement." I had anticipated this call. Sloane was feeling the pressure and looking for someone to blame. I haven't solicited any business or contacted any clients with the intention of taking their business, I replied truthfully. If clients have reached out to me personally, that's their prerogative. We have reason to believe you're actively undermining the company. That's simply not true, Diane. I've been nothing but professional, but I can't control how clients react to my departure. After a tense back and forth, Diane ended with a thinly veiled threat about legal consequences if I violated my agreement. I hung up, unfazed. Later that day, James came home early from his job as a professor at Virginia Commonwealth University. I bumped into Benjamin Wright at the coffee shop, he said, mentioning a mutual friend who worked on Crosswell's board. He says all hell is breaking loose. Apparently, 4 major clients have formally requested meetings with the board to discuss your termination. Really? This was faster than I'd expected. Benjamin said Sloane's been trying to handle it herself, but the clients are insisting on board involvement. They're questioning her judgment. I allowed myself a small smile. That's interesting. He also mentioned they had an emergency financial meeting. They're projecting significant losses if these clients leave. Over dinner, we discussed what this might mean. James studied me with a knowing look. You're planning something, aren't you? I twirled spaghetti around my fork. Let's just say I'm considering my options. The truth was, I had spent the day researching what it would take to start my own consulting firm. My non-compete prevented me from directly soliciting Crosswell's clients for a year, but it didn't prevent me from establishing my own business. And if clients happened to follow me once they were no longer contractually bound to Crosswell, well, that would be their decision. The next morning, Eliza called again. They're trying to replicate your client notes, she said. Sloane has the account managers combing through every interaction you documented, trying to piece together the relationships. I nearly laughed out loud. My client notes were meticulous, yes, but they couldn't capture the nuances of relationships built over years. They couldn't record how I remembered that Fletcher's daughter was allergic to shellfish when ordering catering for meetings, or how I always sent Davidson a bottle of his favorite bourbon on his birthday, or how I'd helped Westland's CFO navigate a personal crisis that had threatened to derail a major deal. How's it going for them? I asked. Terribly. Sloane had a call with Fletcher Logistics yesterday that ended with him yelling that reading Marissa's notes isn't the same as being Marissa. After hanging up, I opened my laptop and continued working on my business plan. I called it Langley Strategic Partners. Straightforward and professional. I began drafting a website and creating service packages. As I worked, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Vivian Park from Westland. Dinner tomorrow? There's something I want to discuss. Interesting. Vivian was Westland's CEO, a brilliant tactician known for her direct approach. I'd be delighted, I responded, curious about what she had in mind. Vivian chose a quiet, upscale restaurant on the outskirts of Richmond for our dinner. She was already seated when I arrived, her expression brightening as I approached the table. Marissa, thank you for coming, she said, standing to embrace me briefly. I've missed our conversations. It's only been a week, Vivian, I laughed. A week too long. She gestured for me to sit. I hope you don't mind, but I've invited a few colleagues to join us. Before I could respond, I spotted Harold Fletcher and Gerald Davidson being led to our table. Behind them was Anthony Torres, CEO of Torres Innovations, another of my former key clients. What's going on? I asked as they took their seats. We're staging an intervention, Harold said with a grin that didn't quite mask his seriousness. For Crosswell and Pine. Over appetizers, they revealed that each of them had met with Sloane Reeves and left unimpressed. The board had reached out to some of them directly, trying to smooth things over, but the damage was done. She tried to tell me that your departure wouldn't affect our service level, Anthony said, shaking his head. Then couldn't answer basic questions about our upcoming product launch, information you've had for months. The bigger issue, Vivian added, is trust. How can we trust a company that discards someone like you so carelessly? It shows a fundamental misunderstanding of why we do business with them. I listened, touched by their loyalty but cautious. I appreciate the support, but I don't want to be the reason your companies make decisions that might not be in your best interests. Gerald Davidson tapped his water glass with a spoon. That's precisely why we're here, Marissa. This is about our interests. They had a proposition. They knew about my non-compete agreement, but they also knew it would eventually expire. In the meantime, they wanted to know if I was planning to start my own firm. We've discussed this among ourselves, Harold explained. We're prepared to wait out your non-compete period. When it expires, if you have your own consultancy, we want to be your first clients. We're not asking you to violate any agreements, Vivian clarified. We're just telling you that we'll be reviewing our options when our contracts with Crosswell come up for renewal. I was stunned by their coordinated approach. What about your current projects? We'll fulfill our contractual obligations, Gerald said, but we won't be expanding our services with them. And when the time comes, the implication was clear. They were offering me a lifeline, a guaranteed client base once I could legally work with them again. This is overwhelming, I admitted, in the best possible way. Anthony leaned forward. There's more. We've been talking to other businesses in our networks. There's significant interest in your services, Marissa. People who have heard about how you work, who want that same level of attention and understanding. As dinner progressed, we carefully avoided discussing specific plans or making concrete arrangements that might violate my agreement. Instead, we talked about industry trends, their business challenges, and my perspectives on strategic growth. By dessert, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. These weren't just clients mourning the loss of a service provider. They were allies who valued what I brought to their businesses. As we prepared to leave, Vivian pulled me aside. We heard Sloan has been implying you were difficult during the transition. We all know that's not true, and we've made that very clear to the board. I drove home that night with my mind racing. The dinner had confirmed what I suspected. The relationships I had built were strong enough to withstand this transition. Moreover, they represented an opportunity to create something new, something that truly reflected my values. When I walked through the door, James took one look at my face and knew. Good dinner? Life-changing, I replied. The following week brought a surprising development. I received an email from Lawrence Bennett, chairman of the board at Crosswell and Pine, requesting a meeting. I agreed, suggesting we meet at a neutral location, a quiet cafe near the river. When I arrived, Lawrence was already there, looking considerably more haggard than when I'd last seen him at the company holiday party 6 months earlier. Thank you for coming, Marissa, he said, shaking my hand firmly. I appreciate your willingness to talk. Of course, Lawrence. What can I do for you? He sighed, running a hand through his silver hair. I'll be direct. The board is concerned about the client response to your departure. We've received formal letters from 6 major accounts expressing their disappointment and indicating they're reviewing their contracts. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. I understand that must be challenging. It's more than challenging. It's potentially catastrophic. He leaned forward. Marissa, the board feels your termination may have been hasty. We'd like to discuss your return to the company. I had suspected this might happen, but hearing it still sent a jolt through me. In what capacity? We're prepared to offer you a promotion. Senior Vice President of Client Relations reporting directly to the board. A significant increase in compensation, of course. And Sloan? She would remain CEO, but your division would operate with considerable autonomy. I took a sip of my coffee, considering his offer. It was tempting, a vindication of sorts, but something felt wrong about it. What happens to my team? The people who are currently trying to manage my client relationships? Lawrence hesitated. There would be some reorganization, naturally. Translation. Those people would be pushed aside to make room for me. The same callous approach that had been used with me would be applied to them. I appreciate the offer, Lawrence, but I need to consider it carefully. He looked relieved, clearly having expected an immediate rejection. Of course. Take the weekend to think about it. After he left, I called James to share the news. Are you considering it? He asked. I don't know, I admitted. It would be easier than starting from scratch. But it would mean working under the woman who fired me without cause, in a company culture that's shifting away from everything I value. That evening, I received another surprising call, from Eliza. I shouldn't be telling you this, she began, her voice hushed. But Sloan had another meltdown today. Westland Manufacturing informed her they won't be renewing their contract when it expires next quarter. She's blaming everyone but herself. How are you holding up? I asked, concerned for my former team. It's getting worse. 2 of the account managers have already quit. The rest of us are just trying to keep things from completely falling apart. After we hung up, I sat in my home office for a long time thinking. The board's offer represented the easy path, back to the familiar, with the added satisfaction of Sloan having to acknowledge her mistake. But returning would mean compromising on the vision that had been forming in my mind since my termination. Langley Strategic Partners could be something different. A firm that truly prioritized relationships over transactions, that saw clients as partners rather than revenue streams. I picked up my phone and dialed Lawrence's number. I've made my decision, I told him when he answered. I appreciate the offer, but I must decline. Marissa, please reconsider. My decision is final, Lawrence, but I wish you and the company all the best. As I hung up, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones that ultimately set us free. 6 months passed quickly. I spent the time meticulously building the foundation for Langley Strategic Partners. I secured office space in a renovated historic building downtown, developed a comprehensive service model, and hired a small but talented team, including Eliza and 2 other former colleagues who had left Crosswell and Pine. I was careful to adhere strictly to my non-compete agreement, focusing on developing relationships with businesses outside of Crosswell's client base. Word spread quickly in Richmond's business community, and I found myself fielding inquiries from companies I'd never worked with before. Meanwhile, the situation at Crosswell and Pine continued to deteriorate. Through the grapevine, I heard that Fletcher Logistics had reduced their contract by 60%. Davidson Partners had shifted all new projects to other firms. Westland Manufacturing had not renewed their contract at all. The morning my non-compete officially expired, I woke up feeling oddly calm. This was the day I had been working toward, but there was no need to make dramatic moves. The groundwork had already been laid. I arrived at the office early and had just settled at my desk when my phone rang. Is today the day? Harold Fletcher asked without preamble. I smiled. It is. Excellent. I'm sending over the contract we discussed. We've been holding this project specifically for you. By noon, I had received similar calls from Vivian, Gerald, and Anthony. By the end of the week, Langley Strategic Partners had signed contracts with 5 former Crosswell clients, representing nearly $2 million in annual revenue. I hadn't poached a single client. I hadn't needed to. They had come to me of their own accord, precisely as we had discussed that night at dinner 6 months earlier. The most satisfying moment came when my assistant forwarded an email that had been sent to my new company address. It was from Sloan Reeves, requesting a meeting to discuss potential collaboration opportunities. I politely declined. 1 year after my termination, Langley Strategic Partners had grown to a team of 15, serving 22 clients across various industries. We had moved to larger offices and were developing a reputation for excellence and integrity. I was reviewing quarterly projections when Eliza knocked on my office door. You have a visitor, she said, looking slightly uncomfortable. Sloan Reeves. I raised an eyebrow. I don't recall having an appointment with her. You don't. She just showed up and insisted on seeing you. I sighed. Send her in. Sloane entered my office, looking far less polished than she had the day she fired me. The confident posture was gone, replaced by a tense, almost desperate energy. Marissa, thank you for seeing me, she began, taking the seat across from my desk without waiting for an invitation. What can I do for you, Sloane? She took a deep breath. I'll be direct. Crosswell and Pine is struggling. We've lost 40% of our revenue since your departure. The board is considering drastic measures, including a potential sale of the company. I waited, suspecting there was more. I wanted to propose a merger between our companies. Your client relationships combined with our infrastructure could be powerful. The irony was almost too perfect. A merger, I repeated. Yes, with you taking a leadership role, of course. I studied her, recognizing the desperation behind her proposition. This wasn't about collaboration. It was about survival. I'm afraid that won't be possible, I said finally. Our companies have fundamentally different approaches to business and client relationships. Marissa, please. I wish you all the best, Sloane, truly, but my answer is no. As she left, I felt no triumph or vindication, just a quiet confirmation that I had made the right choice in creating something new rather than trying to fix what was broken. The revenge I had imagined wasn't in watching Crosswell and Pine struggle, but in the success I had built from the ground up. I had proven my value not through confrontation, but through consistency and care. I learned that sometimes the most powerful response isn't fighting back, it's moving forward. And in that forward motion, I found not just success, but fulfillment.